Hi, making this video to review what comes up in Milestone 3. I think you're starting to get the hang of it and understand, what's being asked in each one of the milestones. So hopefully this one won't feel too different. So, we've been through the product part piece of it. We've talked about the targeting and the positioning piece of it. Now we need to move on to the next of the 4 Ps, and that's pricing and selling channel strategies. So you're going to need to do some research because you're going to have to find out where your target market, or I should say how your target market values your product, and where do they shop for a product like yours. Those are things that you're going to have to determine through your research. Okay, so starting with the pricing strategy. Where to start? You want to look at your target market's wants and needs, of course, and you've done some research on that already. It doesn't hurt to solidify it as you go along. So consider how they value your product, and value means, do they see it as a premium product? Do they see it as what should be something that should be inexpensive? You have to think about how they value it. And then that relates then to your position statement. You're going to want to come up with a pricing strategy that's reflective of how you see yourself positioned in the marketplace. And that's an important equation to make. So you're going to choose a primary pricing strategy, and I'm going to give you 3 limited choices. I'm going to talk about those in a minute. There could be lots more than this, but I'm just giving you these 3 choices because you should be able to align one of those with your product and its position. And then the last consideration you have in pricing is to think about an introductory strategy. And my best way to say it is, you can only do this once. You can only roll out your product one time. So you have to think about what are the benefits of having an introductory pricing strategy, one that you will eventually retreat from. So you have 3 choices here: a penetration strategy, which you will have, if not already learned about, a skimming strategy, and then don't have an introductory strategy at all, although that comes at a cost. So, because you can't go back and reintroduce your product, so you have to give consideration to it before you launch. So let's talk about that primary pricing strategy. You want to choose a one that, again, is reflective of where you've positioned the product to be. So if you have if you're looking to be the lowest cost option out there, you need to, and that's how your target looks at your product, then you're going to have a low price strategy. A premium price strategy, on the other hand, is if you're trying to target quality, you want to, have a price that isn't lower than all the rest. Just by way of a real quick example, Volkswagen came out with a luxury car that was on par with the best that Audi offered, even kind of might have even fit into the Bentley line, which Volkswagen owns both those companies. It was a really high quality car. It was really wonderful, but they priced it low because it didn't fit into the Volkswagen brand. It failed. It failed miserably, at least in the United States. It was semi successful in Europe. So you can see where that's not in line, and that's what created problems for the success of that product line. And then the last one is market sensitive, although you could say any pricing strategy is going to be market sensitive. But this is one where you realize that you are, that your target market is very sensitive to, in terms of whether or not they'll purchase a product based on the price relative to other things going on. So, for example, you might have a premium priced product, but because inflation's kicking in, people are retreating from the premium brands and going to lower cost brands, thinking that they need to save some money. So in that case, you would say your pricing strategy would have to be market sensitive. You have to be able to be fluid and move. Again, these things overlap. There's pluses and minuses to all 3 of them. And there isn't a perfect strategy. It's just one that makes sense, okay, to how you're positioning your product. And then you have to think about your introductory pricing strategy. So penetration pricing is a temporary, and I mean temporary, reduction of your cost to kind of introduce the product into the marketplace with the primary goal of gaining market share as quickly as you can. One of the things that people think about when they think that is, I don't know if I can afford to do that for very long. And you're right, you can't. The more important consideration, or by far and away the more important consideration, is how are your competitors going to react? They're not going to sit by and it's like, oh, they'll change the price soon enough. They're not going to do that. They're going to react to what your low pricing strategy is. So the timing of which and the amount of which that you're doing this really matters a lot. A skimming strategy is usually reserved for, I'm not going to say reserved for, but seems to fit best with a product that's being introduced in the marketplace without any real competitors, so in other words, truly unique. And it's kind of a way to recoup some of the costs that you've put into developing that product, so you get to profitability more quickly. And of course, the last option is to do nothing, but doing nothing has its pluses and minuses as well. So keep all those things in mind, and then when you actually write that section, you're going to want to mention what the pluses and the minuses are. So the selling channel strategy is kind of replacing what we call place in the 4 Ps or your distribution strategy, because of the short-term nature of what we're doing here for class, and we're going to concentrate on the selling channel strategy. However, if you were actually writing a marketing plan, you'd have to consider all aspects of the distribution strategy. And it might be core to your overall strategy, for example. And I'm going to give a real quick example here, but I did a consulting work for one of the more innovative companies in the, I'm going to call it the cut flowers business. So in other words, if you're going to buy somebody a bouquet of roses or something like that, where would you buy them from? And these people more or less reinvented that whole way of doing things in a way that was just core to their strategy. So their distribution was core to their strategy. So they found a way to grow these roses down in Central America and in some areas in South America, but Central America primarily. And they would grow them, and literally when they got an order, they would cut them, put them into a box, and they would end up in the customer's hands within 2 days. Now that's opposed to the more traditional model where there was several steps to the distribution. And so a company like FTD had retailers that would buy through the FTD, and FTD would do the fulfillment of the orders that they were getting. So that fundamentally changed how people buy flowers, and not surprisingly put the existing people on notice that they had to do something because they had an inferior product that was more expensive, which is not exactly where you want to be, obviously, as a marketer. Okay, so the assignment template works like this. Oh, I'm sorry, going back to the selling strategy. What's key here is understanding where your target shops. You probably came across some of this as you were doing your target segmentation exercise, learning more about it. But where do they shop? That's really important. And where do they shop for the products that you sell? Okay. What is your primary strategy? In other words, you got to kind of make a choice as to which one you're going to go with. Keep in mind that this is a consumer product. As you introduce it, you want to get as broad a distribution as you can quickly. Okay. So you can't selectively pick and then kind of grow from there. Not with this. You need to hit it a lot harder than that. Okay. So keep that in mind. Your primary strategy has to be a real powerful one. But you'll have secondary channels, because again, your customers aren't going to always buy exactly the same way from the same place every time. So you need to think about all that, as you generate this, selling channel strategy, not overall distribution strategy. Okay. So the assignment template, and again, please follow this very literally. I would use these even as headers, to your paper itself. So brief description of your persona. That's basically restating what you've already been saying all along, who the persona is. Your position statement reiterated to support your pricing strategy. That should be a summary of what your position statement that you already developed is. You want to define how your target market sees the value of the product. You considered that when you were actually creating the product in the last milestone. What's your overall pricing strategy? 2 to 3 paragraphs to describe which one you're going to choose, low, premium, or market sensitive. Define how you are going to apply it, and what the pluses and the minuses are of your choice. Define your introductory price strategy. That's penetration, skimming, or not doing anything at all. Again, pointing out the pluses and the minuses. How would you apply it? And then also pointing out the pluses and the minuses, and define your selling strategy, and that's selling channel strategy, and that's you're going to have to reiterate and say what research showed you where your target customer buys, and have that be reflective of your choices of what your channel strategy is. So that kind of summarizes it, and that should get you through milestone 3. As always, if you have any questions about anything that goes into it, let me know. I think you're picking up on the theme here. I expect this stuff to be research backed and not just kind of like what you think could be in the marketplace. I want you to do a little research and really understand and know that's what you're making the right choice. Okay? So, again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, and best of luck with it.